Digital gramophone makes no sense.
Hey guys, Happy New Year. So I'm gonna do the vinyl tag. I originally wasn't really, I watched Andrew's video and it was great to see Andrew, don't get me wrong. But I don't know, I didn't feel too inspired to do one, do a response. Then I started watching several people's responses and I kept coming up with my own answers in my head as I was watching them. And I just thought there had been some really great responses. There's also been some people that have been making videos for a while that have never done a vinyl tag and they decided to do one for the first time. Like Alan and Carm. So I was like, man, if all these people are doing it, got peer pressured into doing it. First one is a discovery in 2020. And my favorite discovery of 2020 was Bartee's Strange. I talked about this album in my favorite 10 albums of the year. This was my second favorite album of the year. I can't wait to see what else he has in store for us in the future. Just a genius at blending genres. Quarantine by, well, if I go back to March and April, yeah, I was stressed nonetheless. And so yeah, there was some digging around online that I usually have been kind of like out of the habit of doing so much. One seller I found just had a great listing of albums, and I picked up Complete Communion by Don Cherry. And this is the first Don Cherry album that I've ever bought or even really listened to all the way through. So it was just a really good deal on a mid-70s pressing. And yeah, stoked to pick that up. So that leads me directly into an album that I'd like to find for 2021, and it would be Symphony for Improvisers by Don Cherry. Because I love that one so much, I feel like going to the next one would just be the natural progression. If I find it, I find it. If I don't, I'm not going to go out of my way. A box set. So earlier in 2020, like right around the time we were finding out how serious the pandemic was, maybe a little before that, Bill at the Vinylverse had done a video showing off some of his box sets, maybe all of his box sets. And so I decided to do kind of a response of my own to Bill. We had been chatting and he said he'd like to see what I had. So I did 2 videos, my CD box sets and my vinyl box sets. And I showed all my vinyl box sets except for one. In a bit of a confession, I intentionally didn't show this. I've had this John Fahey box set since, I mean, it was soon after it came out. So it was 2014. I think this came out in 2013. And I at that time found it on Amazon for like $70. And it retailed for like over $100 at the time. And so, yeah, so the reason why I didn't show it is because of this. 4 Men with Beards. And I just didn't feel like putting up with the the ridicule from people on that. But I will be honest, for a 4 Men with Beards production, it's not bad. And to have all of these albums, from 62 to 67 at that price, and not have to try and, because you don't come across these in the wild around here. All right, the next question is a concept album, and it was actually when I was watching Chris's video vinyl tag. He talked about this band, Hooray for the Riff Raff, and I think he answered them as a discovery of his for this year. He showed the album Small Town Heroes, and I don't know, I think I just had that in my brain. So when I was going through these questions, I thought immediately of The Navigator, which came out in 2017. This is a brilliant album. The concept is not really that hard to parse, but it's still brilliantly done. I believe she said, Linda Segarra, lead singer, principal songwriter of the band, she said that she had listened to David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust for the first time. And if you look, that cover is very inspired by that album cover. And so she had the idea of a similar concept album based around some of the things that she'd been going through in her life. After Small Town Heroes, she took some time to reconnect with her roots, and she went on a trip to Puerto Rico. She moved back to, she'd been living in New Orleans. She moved back to the Bronx, where she grew up. The storyline is basically around a 16-year-old Puerto Rican teenage girl, and who is reconnecting with her sense of identity and discovering, I don't know, I guess her stance on politics in a over-gentrified New York City. And if you think about when this album was released, 2017, yeah, I think that it's quite a statement for the times. An album where a band changed directions. I've watched quite a good amount of these vinyl tags, and nobody's shown this one, so Kid A by Radiohead. It's pretty obvious change in direction there. The next one was a white label promo. I've never understood the fascination that people have with white label promos. I get that that means that it was one of the earliest pressings because it was sent to or whatever. I don't know. I've just never understood the fascination with them. And so what I thought I would show is one that's actually not that rare. It's a white label promo of Graham Parsons' Sleepless Nights. Graham Parsons / the Flying Burrito Brothers. This even had multiple white label pressings. This one happens to be Pittman pressing, and it says promotional copy, not for sale. It's got a hole punch in it. But I found this for, I don't know, somewhere 10 to 15 bucks. And just to check, I went online and looked, and it doesn't cost that much. So if you're dying to have a white label promo, and you like Graham Parsons, then go get this, because it's not that expensive. Okay, a compilation album. You can't go wrong with pretty much any of these. Nigeria 70 comps. This is a Lagos Jump. Strut put out, I think, 4 volumes of these. All right, so the next one was Difficult. It was an album that tells a story. And I thought about doing like an album that like tells a story, like an actual through the music. But a lot of people had some really good actual stories in their life surrounding a certain album. And, you know, I feel like as collectors, we all have things that our albums remind us of, so we can kind of tell a story, you know, around a lot of our albums. Most of mine just aren't, I don't know, that great. Kind of boring, I guess. Some people had some really, really good ones, and some of the better ones were surrounding like a concert. So it was like a live album that they happened to be at that performance, but there was more to it than that. There were some really good stories. So this is the only thing that I could really think of, because it's just I think it's a good concert story. I don't have the album that we went to that actual tour on vinyl. I have it on CD somewhere, but I can't find the cover. So I'll just show this. Sufjan Stevens, Seven Swans. Because whenever I see people talk about Sufjan Stevens, I don't think I've ever seen anybody show this one. And it's brilliant. Gorgeous folk album. But anyway, the tour we saw him on for this particular story was the Age of Odds, how you pronounce it, tour, which was like 2010. And my wife and I weren't married at the time, but we'd been dating. And we went to Asheville, North Carolina to see him, and we met another couple, some friends. And we went to this vegan vegetarian restaurant called Laughing Seed. And we sat kind of towards the back of the restaurant. And there was only one other table of people sitting near us. And me and my friend Matt were talking about Sufjan Stevens and what we think of his music, and being complete douchebags, like talking about how we, loved this album, but totally didn't get like the BQE or whatever that album was, or some of his other albums. Just totally being, like I said, just complete music geek snob douchebags. But we fast forward, we go to the show, we get down in our seats. We're sitting in a completely different part of the theater from our friends. And the band takes the stage. And Sufjan Stevens walks up to the mic. And it didn't take, it was maybe halfway into the first song. And I was like, holy shit. That was Sufjan Stevens sitting at the table next to us at the restaurant. And I told Taylor that I texted my friend Matt, and I was super embarrassed because all I could think about was how fucking stupid and critical we were being, even though we're like, pretty big fans. And we found Matt and Catherine after the show, and I was like, can you believe that? And they said, yeah, we had the exact same response. As soon as we saw him come out on stage, we were like, oh shit, that was him sitting right next to us. And then my wife, Taylor, now wife Taylor, says, I kind of thought, because I just saw those eyes, he's kind of for those of you that don't know, kind of a gorgeous man. So yeah, so basically the night my future wife lost herself in the eyes of Sufjan Stevens while I'm being a complete douchebag talking about his music. An album that you feel needs a vinyl pressing. This is an album that I've always loved, and it's Holopaw's self-titled. This is a band out of Gainesville, I believe Gainesville, Florida. John Orth, the lead singer, some of you might be familiar with him. He worked with Isaac Brock from Modest Mouse on the Ugly Casanova kind of side project. This is just gorgeous, gorgeous alt country. Okay, a common album and an uncommon album. A common album, one of the most common albums, right? Dark Side of the Moon. An uncommon album, not really, because I don't know if it's really that rare. I don't know how many have been pressed of it. I just know it's a band that I've never seen anybody else talk about, and I've always been a pretty big fan of theirs since I saw them open for Spoon around 2002. It's The Natural History This is their 2001 album called Beat Beat Heartbeat. It's just great post-punk kind of indie rock. I bought a reissue of an album of theirs like a couple of years ago, and remembered, I was like, I'd like to have this one on vinyl too, and go on Discogs, and didn't find a listing for it at all. So I actually got the contact information of someone that used to work for this label. Flame Shovel is who put it out on vinyl, and somehow got through to the guy, and he was like, yeah, we have a few copies of it left. And so I bought it from him. An EP. This is He Gets Me High by Dum Dum Girls. Really like the Dum Dum Girls. I don't have a ton of EPs, but I've always really liked this one. All 4 songs are great. 3 originals, and then an absolutely amazing cover of There's a Light That Never Goes Out. A girl group. I would never call this band a girl group. It's a band of all women. One of the best. L7. An album cover that you love. I mentioned in a comment on Davis's tag that I would answer this question with this album, so I'm going to stick to that, like he remembers or cares. Gillian Welch's The Hare on the Harvest. This artwork was done by John Dyer Baisley, who's the lead singer of Baroness and does all of Baroness's artwork. In a rare step outside of the metal world, he had done the artwork for this when it was released on CD in 2011. Now, the 2011 artwork, CD artwork, which I know I had that somewhere. My wife took that album from me and kept it in her car forever, so I don't know where it is now. But it was monochromatic, didn't have all of this color, and it was embossed in like a really thick card. An album that you've listened to the most. Now, I don't think that I would say that this is the album that I've listened to the most in my life. It's one of them. I looked up, because Shannon had done a video talking about her stats of music that she had listened to. She logged every album that she listened to and then looked at her Spotify results or whatever. I looked at my Apple Music results, and the top 5 listens, so I can remember off the top of my head, was Springsteen, Van Morrison, Vampire Weekend, Wilco, and David Bowie. And all 5 of those results are totally due to my son, Sam, and all of the driving around in the car that we did this past year during quarantine. And so the album we listened to the most, I'm pretty sure, was Van Morrison's Moondance. An album that you just had to have an original. There's probably only a few instances where I've gone out of my way to get an original, and this one I definitely did. And this was 10 years ago, at least. Yeah, around 10 years ago that I got this album, and I paid too much for it. But this is a sealed, I've shown this before, but it's been a little while. A sealed original 1995 copy of Sunvolt's Trace. The last album you bought, I don't have. It's on the way. But I did go record shopping with Dave, digging with Dave, after Christmas. And at Lunchbox, I picked up Mulatu of Ethiopia. This is the 3 LP Strut reissue. Okay, an album that they didn't get. The last concert that I went to before we went into quarantine was Sturgill Simpson. And it was a full-on rock show. And he played Sound and Fury for the first set. There was kind of 2 sets, straight through all the way. And they killed it. And I'm not saying that nobody got this album. Lots of people really got this album. I mean, I've seen several people in the VC that have talked about how much they love it. And the critics, it was very well reviewed. A lot of his fan base, however, just were almost insulted by it. And at that concert, I gotta be honest, I've never seen so many sad, pathetic, whiny, drunk people wearing camo in my entire life. There were so many people that were just like, their night had been ruined. It's like, what is this? It's called the Sound and Fury Tour. What the fuck did you expect? It was a great show. And Tyler Childers opened, so at least they got, you know, Tyler Childers out of it. There were a lot of unhappy people at that show. Punk album. You know, I have several punk albums. I don't have a ton of punk albums. I don't even know if punk makes up a 5% of my collection. So a lot of, you know, I could show plenty of albums from the late 70s, early 80s or whatever. But instead of showing you all the punk albums everybody else has shown, I thought, I don't think I hadn't seen this one. Jawbreakers, 24-Hour Revenge Therapy from 1994. Good album. A 2020 reissue. Now it says, the question says your favorite 2020 reissue. Well, I did a video 2020 recap where I listed off a bunch of the reissues that I picked up in 2020, because there were a lot of them. And the one that I was excited about the most that was announced towards the end of the year, and it had not arrived by the time I did that video, so I will show it, is Fortet's There Is Love in You. This is one of my favorite electronic albums of all time. I'd say it's, I don't know, it's really up there as far as any album for me. I just love this album. I'm not a huge electronic guy. But Fortet, I am all about Kieran Ebden, and this album is amazing. Came with this additional LP of remixes. Well, that's it. Vinyl Tag 2021. Yeah. Take care. Hope everybody's doing all right. Okay, bye.